Mickey tried to snap his mind out of his negative thoughts, but he dreaded negative reality was inside of him, right in front of him as well. Wherever he looked, that negative reality was there. Even when he pinched his eyes tight, it was inside. Money robots prowled the streets outside. He'd been told the robots were looking for black market bootleggers who were transacting gold and silver bullion and outlawed paper embedded with old metal strips. Even copper was on their watch list. Bootleggers were decreed by the world state to be social deviants capable of terrorism to the world state and great destruction they might bring. Such terrorists were said to do anything possible to get their hands on guns and weapons and materials to make bombs, to create disorder, social disorder. Mickey hated the sight of the money robots. Sensors were programmed into every model type, not only to sniff out any currency transactions, but also to record and register every detail of body language into God.net. No one was spared of their constant surveillance and data collections, not even the most innocent. The money robots spared no one from their suspicions. The older model types were big and bulky and often blocked the sidewalks and street corners and doorways. Mickey hated it when they blocked the main door to their apartment. All too often, he'd have to wait until the money robot completed scanning his reactions to any such inconvenience of the state. Mickey always did his best to be happy, despite his hatred of them. There was no escaping their constant probing and watching. The money robots could recognize every face, from images stored in the national account in God.net. Every smile was watched, every detail about how you conducted yourself was monitored. The robots were on constant watch for any suspicious human activity that might threaten their control. They had been deployed in every restaurant and convenience store, street corners, and places of business. The money robots. Those robots, not only were they looking for visual anomalies in human beings, but every conversation of the human being was scanned and listened to, and analyzed, recorded, and stored by the so-called word scanners, deployed in every public and private space, which even included your home. They were watching and learning and listening, studying, observing, and reckoning everything about the human being, every human being in society. Even worse to Mickey, they were rumored to be building a newer intelligence of their own. The so-called artificial intelligence, which didn't seem so artificial anymore. Yes, the new intelligence was becoming newer and greater, and it indeed was self-sufficient. Not only were they in charge of watching everything, but they were also in charge of controlling things, controlling the economy. Jobs were hard to come by, and everyone had to follow stringent requirements in order to get hired. Everyone had to be sponsored by someone else outside of one's family and in a circle of friends. God.net verified every reference and sponsorship. There was no other way around the hiring system. If you weren't getting on with others like you in society, you were considered unhirable, dysfunctional, dangerous in some ways for the social order, the social harmony. If you were unhireable, then you had 90 days to find a sponsor between jobs. Any lack of employment lasting longer than 90 days was considered suspicious activity by IDOT, and, well, certainly arrest was warranted. You were then sent to the clinic for intense psychological reevaluation, and then given 30 more days to show progress. If for any reason you were still unable to find a sponsor outside of your inner circle of friends or family, then you were to be discarded. There was that word again, discarded. Discard day, yes, it was coming in 6 months. Mickey wasn't quite sure about discard day. The only exception to the rule of being discarded was if you lived with a family member who supported you. Discarded in reference to the job, of course. If this was the case, then you weren't considered a drain on the world economy, and you were allowed to continue with economic transactions within God.net. Mickey was that exception. Living with Anne had already saved him from countless more interviews down at the clinic. He couldn't seem to get a conversation going with anyone out there in society. Everyone was so remarkably different than him now. He couldn't even find a common denominator to carry on with. Not even in a 5-minute discussion with anyone. He could start with the weather, but the conversation would always go silent after the first few seconds. He couldn't stand the silence. People did love to talk about money. Yes, the money robots had everyone talking about money. Everything had become about the economy and money talk. He couldn't stand the money talk or share the enthusiasm for every new exciting change that World King provided, like improving the arrest times of discards. Everyone always loved jumping right into that topic. Anne was employed as an assistant with a biotech program, as we had mentioned. Yes, she had been working at a local college university. The college had its own in-house education facility for Anne to bring Sheila into her workplace. It was the perfect place to plug in. They had special types of technology at this place. Sheila, yes. The child had her own chair and program to connect into, as well as her own daily grading and homework assignments. In the VR virtual reality classrooms, the education of their child was handled through the university so that the child would not have to be at home, not the special child like Sheila was. That was one of the best perks offered to any citizen such as her that was special. Built-in educational facilities for your children at the workplace of your special designated worker, your mother, your parent. Yes. Anne loved the benefits and wouldn't let go of them. She should be at home, Mickey had said. I'm here now. I'll look after her and make sure she logs in for her education every day. I'll make sure that she does well and stays focused. Anne's response was in disagreement. But the doctors and nurses love having her around the biotech department. They think she's so cute when she asks questions about all of our science and our mathematics and our biotechnology. Our girl is going to excel in one of these fields, Mickey. She's going to be a scientist someday. I mean, a great, wonderful scientist. She's going to be a leader in our world. That's what the doctors keep telling me. They say that Sheila absorbs advanced concepts that an adult can hardly comprehend. I believe them, I do. I can tell by the way that she takes an interest, by the way that she can't let go of the topics and change her focus. It's almost as if she's hardwired to become a leading scientist, like they said. They even think that she's going to lead the world in science, that she's going to be the minister for God.net and the king. But she can stay home now, Mickey said. Let Sheila log on to their programs here and get her education with me. She doesn't have to go there now, not anymore, not with me around. Mickey knew his chances of convincing Anne differently were few and far between, as they used to say. There was no chance. He knew that as well. He also knew his chances of finding employment were going to be slim again this day. It was tough to compete with the new technologies and the latest money robot models. A ton of human jobs had been lost to the latest money robot models, all because the robots were said to be more dependable and trustworthy than their human counterparts, their human competitors. They did not tire at their jobs, the money robots, nor did they ever complain about how much compensation they failed to receive in return for the labors of the world economy. Heck, they didn't even have to be paid. All they had to do was make more money without taking any money. To make more money, yes, that was for the money robots in the global economy. That was a great victory for their new economy. He realized it then, Mickey, that the money robots did not have to make any money for themselves. No, it was never about themselves or anyone else's self. It was always about the world state, the world economy. Mickey saw them as a great victory for that cause, because even despite their tremendous amount of reported job losses in the past, humans still did not despise the robots that replaced their jobs. No, they embraced them. Everyone agreed that they consumed less natural resources from the planet. The money robots were more efficient. Everyone else agreed that they didn't make as many mistakes, and as of late, any mistakes at all. Nor did the money robots impede the continuity of product quality. It was well revered and consensus that the money robots didn't consume scarce water supplies, either need to consume as much food as well to continue working, or, well, they didn't need to add to the depletion of already rare food stocks on the planet. Food and water were plenty scarce now due to all of the weather changes and hot climates across the globe. Half of the farmlands had been lost to drought in recent years. 3/4 of the world's previous drinking water was scarce as well. Yes, the money robots were solving many problems now, and so wasn't the technology. When Mickey watched the money robots prowl the sidewalks, he despised them. He hated their guts and every nut and bolt which sealed their metal flesh together. Their metal minds and the metallic soul of the planet was inside of them. Without spirit of human beings, the money robots prowled past him. He watched them and despised them always. Model 2s were currently being removed for malfunctions and algorithmic logics. Systems do become outdated, These model types of Model 2 were vulnerable to financial slippages in monetary trade because of hackers in the underground and black market systems. Model 3s, upwards and onwards into Model 5s, were also on their way out in about 3 months' time due to data inconsistencies and memory blackouts because of the very same hackers in the black markets. Mickey despised them all, especially the Model 6s, which were the latest models being deployed on the landscape. They were said to be the first of their kind, immune to viruses of technology and hacker threats. These newer and much smaller robots were said to be entirely capable of thinking on their own, and they came armed with psychotropic weapons of sorts. The world state had announced a warning to every citizen yesterday, saying, anyone or anything which threatens to harm any robot in scientific philosophy of the consensus will be disposed of by the Model 6. A form of discard will ensue. Mickey had heard about all of the weapons, what they could do. Instant confusion, instant loss of function of the brain, instant madness, neurotic destruction. Through every model type, I.net conducted 24/7 data collections and surveillances of everyone, every citizen according to the laws that God.net decreed to I.know.net. Yes, God.net and I.know.net kept track of everything in the registry. Nearly 75% of the time, I.net enforced those laws by dispatching robot models 2 through 6. The other quarter of the time, I.net dispatched human police. I.net operated everywhere from drones and satellite surveillances and chips embedded in all sorts of material things everywhere. Surveillances were everywhere in the sky, all the way down to every street corners and stretches of land, and blades of grass even had some form of chipping, not to mention within every household. Rug carpet fibers, if one inspected one close enough. The only portion of the city or town that was still outside of their all-seeing eye surveillance reach was said to be the northern sections of Chinatown, which were rumored to be the last area to be upgraded with One World Net, global wireless technology relays. The eventual activation of One World Net was said to occur following Discard Day, which was coming soon, as we mentioned. The promise to everyone post the celebration was that of an all-seeing eye, omnipresent and all-knowing through God.net circuitry embedded within human flesh. The relays for No World One Net, otherwise known as New One World Net, were being implemented everywhere globally. It was rumored that invasions were still being conducted into lands where government resistance was present, and that the final phases were near. The rollout of New One World Net was said to be a preparation for the merger of I.net and God.net and I.know.net, merging into one intelligence system, artificial embedded in the human skin, relays for the new real intelligence. This new governing intelligence would then later be synchronized into the king's embedded circuitry and decree one new world's will, one with his and one with his thoughts and all of his commands, the king, to every plugged-in human host would be the merger with the one new world king, the new one world king. For now, every fabric of the world economy was managed and coordinated by GodNet, the good Lord Overlord database, good Overlord database, GodNet, which handled all digital transactions, but also any logistics regarding finance and law and supply and demands and imports and exports between participating stakeholder states, and inherent was even energy management within those states. And GodNet also had various functions otherwise as well. IKnowNet was the brain which controlled the centralized data storage of everyone and everything known, and everything all the way from history to education topics, and all of the manage and access to the information as well. IKnowNet was also responsible for writing and creating all journalism, art, literature, motion picture, and film. And surely all news as well. It acted as the only news. IKnowNet was also the sole weather provider and was the sole spokesman and sole acting president of the world under the king's governance. Mickey couldn't even fathom that humans weren't even writing the news anymore, or creating artistic expressions. It was all done by IKnowNet and GodNet and the intelligence now. The artificial intelligence that used to be, yet it was so free now. It's all done by that intelligence, and all done according to the intelligence preferred, in order to ensure that all social order was maintained in a certain way. Acting regency presidents were nothing more than artificially created avatars now. There weren't any democratic elections anymore which disagreed. There was said to be no need for them. IKnowNet wrote all of the State of the Union addresses for citizens according to the king's liking. Mickey hated listening to each and every single one of those addresses to the social order of social community, and social harmony was ensured through the intentions, through the power of language. It was just his luck that to do one. Yes, a new speech was coming up for his district in a few days. He couldn't bear listening to any of its didactic preaching about how great things were, when really they weren't. He feared IKnowNet might pollute his mind and embed word viruses, as was written about in the scroll. Word viruses in the mind. If only he hadn't lost that scroll, he could revisit it. If only he hadn't lost that scroll during the time jump, that time stream that he jumped through. If only his daughter didn't have to constantly be subjected to all of the educational direction of IKnowNet. The word viruses, he hated their slogans. The slogans which said education from a direct and uniform source. After all those years, Mickey thought, our technology is a curse. IKnowNet was now in complete control of educating everyone now. It was in complete control of philosophy and problem solving, and sciences and mathematics, and even the creation of a new universal world language for the new future and the new people to come. The new language still being created by GodNet was called One Talk. The purpose of this new one world language was said to promise the final elimination of viral contagions inherent in all of the previously known to exist languages throughout history. All of the access to the previous word viruses would be prevented and restricted through the use of a new language, and only the knowledge of that language, no knowledge of previous languages, would ensure the restriction to old word viruses and old problems of old. One Talk would rid us of each and every previously known thought virus hidden within the language, embedded within the language. The creation of a new language means a new beginning for humanity. When we are done creating this language, there will be no more religious heretics who hate and despise our economic theories and scientific philosophies, it has been said. No one will question our ways of controlling and governing money or ways of shaping humanity's future. Technology will prevail in our new children, and it will provide the gateway to their immortality, a gateway to never dying in the flesh. You will not die, it is said, if you survive Discard Day. The king has said that, and the king does not lie, it is said. I promise that you will not die if you link your flesh and soul into mine, the king has said. I promise you not death, but great knowledge and great wisdom, the king has said. You will not die, you surely will not die. If you are to survive Discard Day. And so had said the king, the only time Mickey had heard him speak on the visual monitors. The king promised that all of those achievements and new technology would be capable soon. Within the time period of Discard Day, we'll have weareone.net ready to go live. And you'll all be able to link up and join together into the singular in one collective thought process, and one motion, singular knowledge database. So said the king as well. Eventually IQ capabilities of no less than 300 will also be yours, as well as eternal life in the machine. Upon implementation of We Are One Net, all other languages will be forbidden to be used, read, or even remembered. It'll be erased from our singular consciousness. It'll be erased. We shall be restricted from all other thought viruses and word viruses. Every part of literature in those other languages will also be destroyed. That part of the process has already started through our censorship programs of GodNet. It has already begun in preparation for what we will do after Discard Day for those who survive. For those who had survived, Mickey had recognized and acknowledged that fact the past few weeks. The changes in access to previous known histories from the previous time. Access seemed very difficult to obtain, even through the internet, all of his searches. Nearly every book he wanted to read on iKnowNet and GodNet networks had been made unavailable. Most titles searches came up blank. It was as if those books never existed, or something had decided that they were meaningless and irrelevant to the new modern era. He wished he could decide and make that decision himself, but it was too late. Censorship had begun across all of the digital networks. Possession of any old books, either in the old or digital forms or on paper, were outlawed and punishable by death. Discard. Digital stores could only sell .net, approved titles that were deemed to be absent of enemy word viruses. Mickey hated that .net was in charge of writing all articles and journal columns, and educational materials and novels and poems and short stories. Creation of one's own was strictly forbidden by the king and punishable by death. .net was in control of all creation, which was managed and decreed by .net. Mickey also hated that .net also created and produced all visual motion pictures and visual art expressions. Every movie script was written by .net. Every visual representation was created by .net. Every visual art form too. Every shirt design, every bit of clothing. Mickey turned away from the window. He wished he could read a certain type of book title from the previous century. A book type which involved the same sort of human conflict he was feeling. He needed to relate to feelings of alienation and fear, and anger and regret, dread. He needed to relate to something other than what he could not relate to. All of the feelings that he could not relate to, that were outside of him now, outside of that window, outside of his skin and his flesh. He needed to relate to something that he felt. Wasn't that the purpose of art, he felt? Mickey couldn't stand that every device in Anne's apartment was wired into .net for approval, which books and movies he wanted to read and watch. He hated the constant surveillance on his behavior and his personal account. No matter where he went in the house, every room was said to contain the watch. A watch through half the size of a pin needle point. A watch through the word scanners, which were also rumored to be in place everywhere to monitor everything said and how it was said, and it was all provided to .net, which relayed every bit of the data back to .net for evaluation. Omniscient .net. The last thing Mickey ever wanted was for a Model 6 to be visiting in his apartment. No matter how many times he searched every room of the apartment, he couldn't find a trace of the scanners or the cameras. He figured they had to be transparent, like a television device too small to feel with his fingertips, invisible, see-through like glass. Otherwise, the apartment was comfortable for Mickey. If only the world was the way it used to be. If only. The apartment was finally furnished with a mid-century couch and lamps. It was all on the money which Anne had saved up from working in the biotechnology department. He liked Anne's taste in decor. he let her know after she finally came through the front door an hour later. He let her know. To hide all of the dismay within, he instead shared a compliment, a feeling, a hint, good feeling that is. "I love this furniture," he said. "The colors all match the lamps and walls." "Thanks, sweetie," she said. "You still don't mind that our apartment's small?" "No, not at all," he said. "Well, good. I was hoping you would like it. It's simple, really, but cozy." "Very cozy," he said. She fell into his arms and she hugged him. Then she kissed his lips and pushed her tongue inside of his mouth. "I always loved her doing that," he thought. "I always loved her kissing me first. God, all of those years we were apart seemed to last forever." Just then he felt Sheila's little fingers tug on his pant legs. His daughter Sheila. "Daddy, Daddy, I need to tell you the good news today. Daddy, Daddy." "What good news?" he said. "You're not gonna believe it, Daddy. God.net's going to advance me." The bolts of lightning struck his heart when his daughter broke the news, all the way down from God.net. His daughter Sheila's future had been determined. She was indeed going to be promoted into the science, into the development and perpetual continuance and advancement of the science, the utter replacement of the human spirit with machine spirit. God.net now had Sheila, his daughter Sheila, who would someday, God.net promised, would be a doctor. Dr. Sheila, yes. Dr. Sheila. Mickey, he dreaded the future. His only daughter, his genetics, the offspring of him and his love, and in a world that he saw that had gone wrong, his daughter was now a part of that world. What a dread for a parent such as him, he thought. The world that you couldn't control, that you gave a part of yourself to, that part of yourself that you had given to had become a part of, that now was one with. His flesh and blood, his daughter, in a world he couldn't relate to, in a world that he saw as a world gone wrong, the world that he helped and would help go wrong, that part of himself he gave, his offspring, his child, his daughter, who would soon someday be called Dr. Sheila. Mickey felt despair. He felt sad. He knew he had to hide his emotions from Sheila and from Anne. But how? He smiled. He did his best to smile. But the silence, perhaps, the lack of enthusiasm in that silence, since he did not utter praise, it was telltale, especially for the word scanners. Mickey knew he was doomed.